This video was made to hopefully help others with a similar issue. It lists the steps that I took to figure out why my boat would sometimes be reluctant to shift out of gear. Note that I am a self-taught mechanic, not certified in any way. My information comes from the internet discussion groups and the Volvo Penta Workshop Manual for the 2004 DP-SM sterndrive. Your experience may vary. Here's the problem. With the engine running, shifting into forward and reverse works perfectly. The gears engage nice and smooth. However, when returning to neutral from either forward or reverse, the control handle sometimes needs to be wiggled back and forth for the gears to disengage. In addition to the steps in this video, it would be wise to ensure that you are using the correct gear oil in your sterndrive. The exact specification Volvo Penta brand synthetic gear oil, 75W-90 API GL5, is all that has been in the drive. Gear oil is changed each season before winterizing, and the levels are correct. First, the shift cable adjustment was checked. The shift cable itself was replaced 3 years ago. When disconnected from the shift linkage mechanism on the drive, the cable moves smoothly and easily. The travel from forward to reverse is 70 millimeters, and, when in neutral, the travel is at 35 millimeters, or centered. The cube nut is adjusted to be centered in the shift link mechanism when in neutral. This didn't solve the problem. Second, we attempted to remove excess slop in the shift linkage. We found that even after replacing potentially worn parts, there was no change in the slop. However, adding 2 1/4-inch stainless washers to the mechanism cut the slop in half. This didn't solve the problem. Third, the depth and shimming of the shift shoe stop screw was checked. The stop screw had 5 shims. After checking the depth, it was discovered that even with 0 shims, the shift shoe would not touch the back of the stop screw. Shimming couldn't solve this problem. Fourth, the shift actuator housing was removed. As you will see in the video, there was excess wear in the housing, and it was replaced. This solved the problem, and the boat now shifts perfectly. So we've adjusted the shift cable here, so I think it's pretty accurate. It has a 70 millimeter travel from forward to reverse, and the center section is almost exactly 35, so that appears like it's right. This has a little bit of slop in it, as you can see, that may be causing the problem. Right now, this nut here is adjusted so that if I pull the slop forward, I can't put the nut in the hole because it's hitting back here, and if I push it backwards, I can't push it in because it's hitting up here, so that means it's going to be centered right when the slop is in the middle, like this. Yeah, right there, centered in the middle of the slop. We replaced the bell crank here, the washers, the rod back here on the back. The ship goes all the way through. The washer here, of course the cotter pins, and didn't really have much of an effect on the slop, even with brand new parts. So if I were to do it again, I probably would not replace these. However, putting these 2 washers right here, these are the, once again, the 1/4-inch stainless flat washers here. I think I got these at Home Depot. They have the outside diameter is bigger, and it actually keeps this bar from sliding into this crank housing here, and that reduced probably 1 millimeter, maybe 1.5 millimeters of slack out of the whole mechanism. Okay, our next step is to remove this shift actuator screw. Mine's on there pretty tight, and it says to support the arm while you remove it. I don't see an easy way of doing that without using their tool. So I'm going to install the tool, which they say to do in the manual in the next step. But basically this tool will go in here. See, this little thumb screw comes out. Oops. We'll pull these 2 screws out, slide that in behind there, and then put these newer screws that are longer down in there to hold it, then the shift actuator will be moved into position where it is actually going to be when we shim it, and then we'll use that thumb, this little screw here, just to tighten it in to hold it in place. And I think this will probably be the best way to get this nut off, is to put that in first. Which is good. These don't have to be in very tight, so I'm just going to put them in just kind of hand tight here. So, then our thumb screw go here. That's supposed to hold it in the right position for shimming. Okay, so that should support that pretty well. So now, see, this is using a 9/16 inch socket. See here if we can pop that loose. There it goes. And we'll see. Yeah, there you go. There's the shim, and you can see that the mounting surface is brass. There's what the shims look like. Very thin. So it looks like we have one. Oh, excuse me, 5, because there was the one on the before. Okay, so we have 5 shims. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that were on there originally. Okay. Okay, so if you look in the middle of our screw hole there, you'll see the end of the shift dog. And as I rotate the propeller here, the shaft, hopefully you can see that. That guy's moving in and out. I'm going to do this a little still, but anyway, that guy moves in and out of the hole. And so the idea is it should just be barely touching the bottom of the screw when it's at its highest position. So I've got this over here. I've got a new screw here. I'm going to measure the depth of this when it's at its highest, when the dog's the most out. Okay, so right now the dog's the furthest out this way, and I'm going to measure it with some calipers here, see how deep it is. 12.3, and so here's the problem. It's 12.3 millimeters deep, and if I measure the bolt here, you can see it doesn't even come up to touch the bolt on the back at all. So shimming it would just move it out even further, and so it's already deeper at its closest point. So that means that the shims on this screw are not doing anything really, because that shift dog never even touches it when it's in this position, which is supposedly the right position. Now if you notice, I can push in on this quite a bit, and if it's pushed in, obviously it would be hitting the end of the screw. So I'm just going to try something here. I'm going to put the screw in all the way by hand, right? And now if you see, I can push it in a little bit. I'm going to rotate the propeller while I do this. Listen. So you can see, once it's highest point right here, it's going a little bit in, but then there it's going a lot in, and then it comes up. So I'm wondering now if this has got too much slack behind it, and maybe we've got a problem behind our mechanism, that it's worn to the point where this is not being pulled in far enough to properly, so the screw does anything at all on the shimming. So I think maybe we've got this thing popping out the front a little bit. So I think we're going to pull this thing out and see what it looks like underneath it. Okay, we're going to take out the shift actuator housing here, the whole housing. I've drained much of the oil, so hopefully we won't see too much oil coming out. I'm sure we'll see some. Now, the tricky part here is I want to keep this guy under pressure until it's time to come out, and I want to make sure I really understand the direction of the shift dog shoe and make sure we don't lose that spring in there. So, okay, here we go. Very carefully. Very carefully. Okay, we're lifting this out. Now, if you look, the 6 or 9, whatever it is facing up. Right there. And the fat side of the dog is on this side here. See that? So the fat side of the dog is to starboard. Thin side of the dog is to port. The 6 is facing up, and there's not a number on the other side. Okay, there's a spring under here we're going to be careful with. And then here's our pin and where it's supposed to be riding in there. If you look right in here, quite a bit of wear on that face as it's shifting in and out. And there too. So I'm going to call this worn to the point where it's causing the problems. And yeah, I have to replace this part here. It's probably going to be the whole housing. That's probably what I'm going to do. Okay, this is the replacement shift actuator, 3855787, Volvo part number. You can see it comes with everything we need for a full 4-bolt replacement. It's got all of the parts here, the shift shoe, the pins, the O-ring, the shimming bolt, and 8 shims as well, which should be plenty. This one here has a number 8 printed on the top of it. If you notice, one side is larger than the other side. This is the larger side. It's going to go to starboard. It's set in a spring there, so this will compress in and out. We have the pin right here that, as the shift is in neutral right now, so as it shifts into forward and reverse, it's going to slide across these flat plate here and click into gear in either forward or reverse. And when it's coming out of gear, this flat plate here, it raises up this shift mechanism, pulls it in tighter, pulls the shoe in tighter to the cone clutch, and will cause it to tap against the shimming bolt on the other side. Let's see if I can flip it over. Here's the shimming bolt on the other side. And this is going to be adjusted in and out using these little shims here, such that when the gear is in its right position here, coming into neutral from either gear, it will ride on this plate here and cause this to tap against the end of the screw, giving a little bit of a hammer action to knock out the cone clutch out of gear, pull it out of its cups. So I think that's the idea we're looking for here. So this is the new one. Let's take a look and compare that to the old one here. If you notice, very similar. We've got a little bit of wear here on the shift shoe. This one says number 9 on it, I believe. But we got a little bit of wear on the shoe, but the biggest problem right here, as you can see, is these planes that were flat on the other one have divots in them where that hammer action has worn away over time and causing this so that it won't come out of gear very easily. It's not too bad right now. It just occasionally has a problem with it and you have to wiggle. the shift mechanism to get it to come out of gear, but we want to replace it now while it's still a little problem so we don't end up with a big problem later. So once again, this is the old one. You can see those divots there. And here is the new one where they are perfectly flat. Alright, so we've got our unit here. It's got the oiled O-ring. The shift shoe is to the right, to the starboard. We're going to put it in. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to put the bolts in, but where's my little, there it is. Since we're going to be shimming this, we need to put our little shim adjuster tool in right here on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and push that in like that. We'll get these other bolts in that side. And while that's happening over there, I'm going to try and careful on that one. Okay, what I've done is I've rotated the propeller shaft until the shift shoe is out towards me as far as possible. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my digital calipers here and we're going to measure how deep this is. Just to get a reading and compare with what I had before. So it says about 11.38 millimeters. Now, if I measure the bolt flat against there, I'm getting 12.17 millimeters. So I'm now going to put the stop screw in, just kind of loosely here at first, and then I'm going to rotate the propeller shaft. Okay, now it's not in all the way, just loose, but actually right now it should be tapping right against the end of that, just for fun. That A there, and I'm going to rotate the propeller shaft. Ah, yes. So right there is where it was when it came up at the farthest out point. So now it looks like I can rotate it in further, right? Looks like that's as far in as it'll go. Now if I rotate the shaft, I can't turn it. The shaft stops right there. So I'm going to loosen it. Shaft stops. Shaft still 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 stops. I can get it around it, but it's tighter there. And it's bumping it a little bit right there. Okay, I had to move the camera so I could get in here and really twist this thing with my arm. But what I'm doing is I'm turning the propeller shaft until it goes all the way around. Right now it's going all the way around, and I can feel it just kind of budge this guy. It goes all the way around fine, but it kind of budges him when it goes around. You can see it kind of move that. So I think that's about where we want it. If I go just a little bit more like that, then it stops. And it's really hard to turn. Well, not really hard, but kind of hard to turn. So it just turns freely. I'm going to interpret it as being one tap around, but I can still get past it. So about there. That's what it feels like to me. 0.26. kind of tight. Might be 0.26. It's pretty close. 0.25. .25 is a little wiggly. Okay. I can't put any further with that like that, so let's try twisting it and see. Yeah, so that's about right, 0.026. Okay. Okay, according to the Volvo manual, these shims only come in one size. So we are going to measure it, and in inches, it is 0.007. And we have to go to 0.026. So 7, 14, 28 could be between 3 and 4, but 4 is closer, 0.28, than 3, which would be 0.21. So we'll go with 4 of those, and then Volvo says to add 3 more shims more than that size. So it looks like we're going to do 7 shims total. Okay, so here's what we're looking at with 3 shims. We're at 0.022 and a half. And I'm going to put one more shim in here. So with 4 shims, we are at 0.29 and a half. So really could be either 3 or 4. I'm going to err on the side of too many, because that'll just mean it won't shift out as well. But if I put in if I don't have enough, then it could damage something. So we're going to put in the 4 and then plus 3 more for 7 on the screw. Okay, so for reality check, I now have the bolt on here with just 4 shims, not the 7 that we're going to end up putting on here. I just want to tighten it up here and just see how the propeller turns with just those 4. Getting it finger tight there. I can see that my little A mark is a little bit further back than it was when I was checking it. So let's just spin the propeller shaft around. Just a little tap as it's going around. So I think that's about right. It goes all the way around, has a little bit of a tap on it. So now we are going to put the 3 more shims on here, as Volvo recommends, or states in their manual to do. So there's my 7 on there. And then we'll put them in, but Volvo also says in their manual to use Volvo Penta sealing compound, which the equivalent is, this is what's called for in the manual, but you can't get it, Volvo Penta gasket sealing compound 116099. But that is the same thing as a Permatex 80019 or Napa's Formaseal Aviation 7651210. So this is the stuff we're going to put on this nut to keep from having problems in the future, or sorry, this bolt. This stuff is super gross, gooey, black, dark brown stuff. We're going to coat the threads of the bolt with it. This stuff doesn't harden apparently. It just helps to make a seal and makes it easier to get this thing off sometime in the future if we need to reshim it. So I'll give it a good sealing all the way around, like that. And then I'm going to take it off the back here, so I get as little as possible down there in the oil case. And put that guy in. Now, I would assume that with 7 in there, it is not going to even tap there, which would be kind of weird, right? What's the whole point? And maybe I've got it wrong. Maybe I should have 6. But it could be that after I torque this bolt down here, it will get closer and hit that way. Or it could be that when it's spinning maybe it's got some extra force that's going to throw that shoe further back. I don't know. But right now, as I spin the propeller, there is no resistance at all, which is fine, I guess. So last thing to do is to torque this bolt down, and then I've got to remove this once this is torqued down, and then put the other bolts back there. Okay, the specs here are 10 to 12 foot-pounds, 14 to 16 newton meters. So one thing that's nice about this bracket is it holds this into place nicely while we are torquing this down. And there we go. Okay, that should all be torqued down. Okay, now we just remove our bracket. So we're taking out the butts from the bracket. We're going to put in our other nice bolts. We're going to check the torque on all these four. And this is 60 to 84 inch-pounds, 6.8 to 9.5 newton meters. That's where these guys are going. I'm just going to kind of tighten these guys down. That guy's there. Take this super easy. Good. Good. Okay, they're all in there. So there's neutral, and there's it going into gear both ways. Let's not forget that we need to put more gear oil in here because we had to drain it in order to replace that. So don't forget to put your gear oil back in. And then we will put our shift linkage up in here and see if it works.